And first, a couple of topics of interest on the platform this week. The first is the much talked about Netflix series Adolescence. Several community members have discussed it, sharing some interesting resources about the manosphere, about incel culture, and how it is shaping the minds of boys and young men. It spans several headings, as you can see: technology, culture, DSGBV, cases in the media. So if you want to just type adolescence in the search bar there, it's at the top if you're using a laptop, and it's at the bottom if you're using a smartphone. And that will just bring up anything that anyone's been discussing about adolescence. Now, the other topic of interest is a new Garda Síochána Inspectorate report, which Katerina shared in the news. And if you're using a smartphone, you can see where that is. It's in the general section in the news. And you can see here from this, the report was conducted by engaging with domestic abuse victims, support services, state agencies and Garda personnel. And the purpose was to measure the efficiency and the effectiveness of domestic abuse responses. It found that many Gardaí are delivering a high quality service, although this is not consistent across the organisation. And as you can see there, there's 52 key recommendations made to improve the services and manage the responses more effectively. And Katerina has shared links to the full report itself, and that also contains a link to an infographic summary, and there's like a 3-minute YouTube video as well, which is presented by Pauline Shields, who's the Deputy Chief Inspector, and that outlines the key findings. So the highlight of today's session: Mary-Louise Lunch is an advocate, a feminist, an activist and a founder of SISI, which is Survivors Informing Services and Institutions. Through professional and personal experience, Mary-Louise developed a deep understanding of how current systems often fail victims and survivors of domestic abuse. This inspired her to lead and to advocate for change. Mary-Louise is widely recognised for her representation of survivors in legislative matters in Ireland and Europe, and she's regularly invited to represent SISI at strategic levels. Her goal is to foster leadership in women who are experts by experience. So over to you, Mary-Louise, and I'm going to stop sharing.
So thank you very much for inviting me to speak today, and it's lovely to see familiar faces. I think we're all on the same side here, which is lovely. So SISI, I guess, came about as through my own frustration of surviving court systems in Ireland. I found myself stuck, trapped within a family law system, unable to escape. I could not understand how perpetrators so easily manipulate and abuse systems and weaponize them against their victims. And I'm somebody who maybe by nature likes to try and figure things out. I like to solve problems and maybe look at things objectively. I was also very lucky from a kind of a serendipity perspective. I bumped into some incredible women who were trailblazing activists, and I attached myself like a limpet to them, I'd say, for a while to learn, to try and understand the civil society sector, the NGO sector, the research, education sector, training. My own personal background, I'm an only child. I did grow up in a coercively controlling home, but I worked in a family retail business, and I really didn't understand what I was getting into. I just knew I wanted to do something about my experience. And no matter where I went, it wasn't safe for me to tell my personal story. And also, it wasn't legal for me to tell anybody. And people were afraid to engage with me individually. And I think even today, so many women who come forwards and want to try and change things because of their own lived experience, once they start trying to engage with, the political sphere, connecting with ministers, writing letters, things go ignored, or their communications are sent back to the statutory agency that has already failed them. So it can be quite a circular trap to become embroiled in. So SISI the model is based on community grassroots, community development. And we're built on 4 core pillars. One is to collect survivors and network survivors across Ireland. The other is to kind of build capacity, mentorship, and training opportunities for survivors to become leaders. So fostering the leadership of survivors. We are an independent resource for data collection and analysis. And then we inform and influence change at every level. We like to immerse ourselves, insert ourselves into places where we believe change is happening. And then inevitably there are spaces that we have to be present in, because if you're not there, well, then you don't have a say. They're the spaces where I really believe change is happening much more slowly. I do believe that the activist space, where voice is used to transform outcomes, is much more impactful. And I know we've seen that maybe in the last decade with various referendums that have happened, where marriage equality, where the voice of the child was brought to the fore, and repeal of the 8th. It is where stories of what has happened, the impact systems are having on people on the ground. It's where those stories can be quite transformative. However, the trap again is, if you don't have a criminal conviction against a perpetrator, you can't speak about it. Or if you're engaged in any legal proceedings, you can't speak about it. And what we're noticing is the duration that women are catapulted into once they go to seek protection as being, a victim of domestic violence. And sorry, I should have said that from the outset. We're a collection of intimate partner abuse survivors. So that's the common thread, is women who have all experiences of being abused by a coercively controlling man, and then have found themselves stuck in a legal system, unable to get your head above water, to try and breathe and to figure out why this is happening, or to say, I don't want to engage anymore. It's the secondary victimization, and I know that is something that is very prominent at the moment. I know that Haven Horizons does a lot of work on prevention, and that is in order to stop the secondary victimization of victim survivors engaging in processes. But right now, there are endless women trapped in those processes, and a victim of domestic violence is sent to the court system to seek protection. And once she's there, it could be a decade before she gets to leave. And that's really the crucial piece that we are focused on changing. And we believe that we can do that by fostering the leadership of survivors, having survivors share the collective experience, and placing survivors in key strategic positions in order to make people uncomfortable and inform and influence change. And also, I think for many women like me, and Sharon, will you please interrupt me if I'm going on too long? For many women like me, doing something about it is survival. When you become involved with an abusive and controlling man, there might be several abusive and controlling men in a woman's life. What that does is it denies a woman's potential for becoming whatever it is she might have dreamed of, for what she might want to be, for pursuing her own career, dreams, education, you know, having the friends that she would like to have, being around like-minded people. The isolation that comes with coercive control removes so much of that. And I believe that SISI is a space where women can recover a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, a sense of hope, and learn how other women with similar experiences have managed to overcome similar obstacles. And it has worked. It is a very nurturing space. It is a very transformative space. I'm endlessly blown away by what women who come through SISI are achieving on a daily basis. You know, the pursuits, and it seems to be, you know, really about changing things, about wanting to do better, about wanting our children not to suffer what we have suffered, to not put up with maybe what we have put up with. And it's women who, you know, are courageous and brave that are making those changes. So I'd like to just salute anyone here who has come through SISI or is interested maybe in SISI. I wish we had more. I wish we had more resources. I wish, you know, that we could offer this on a grand scale to more women. One of the, I suppose, the painstaking work of SISI is to continue to build alliances and collaborations and to be in strategic positions. And we do that, I suppose, at great cost, at great personal cost. But it is because there is just that hope that we are always on the cusp of achieving something dramatically different. And you know, you mentioned, Sharon, at the start there, adolescence. I watched Adolescence and made my sons watch Adolescence. I didn't make them. One of them, my older lad, he wanted to watch it. You know, my middle son was really questioning, how can you know? And you know, it was her, wasn't she a bully? And you know, looking for that excuse, looking for that way of it being okay, of for laddish behavior to be okay. You know, and it is something that I worry about. You know, the easy way in which the social media space can influence young minds, and also influence anyone vulnerable, you know, the minds of vulnerable women, you know, where it can be a really big leap to come out from behind the safety of a social media space and actually be visible and be accountable. And I think that's something that SISI is trying to do. But there is a cost to it. Again, just to reiterate that when you say we are survivor-led, we are survivor-informed, you're coming with that lived experience. And I know funders, frontline state agencies, some frontline organizations can find that very uncomfortable. It really is it's rocking the boat. It's disrupting the status quo, and it does shift the perspective greatly onto what are we doing about perpetrators, you know, because women might not be as vulnerable and as helpless as a lot of our frontline responders might like to make it. It's easier to do a lot of work around victims than it is to expose perpetrators and to see victims as being a strength in their, you know, a strength and experts by experience. You know, that is quite challenging. However, we have been quite successful. We've managed to get SISI's views into a myriad of submissions, and probably the two key areas for us as we move forward are the in-camera rule and the challenges that the in-camera rule create when it comes to accessing justice. And the in-camera rule, the way it actually encourages and upholds the secondary victimization, which I mentioned earlier. It prevents victim survivors from having their criminal statements included in family law proceedings. It prevents evidence that comes up in family law proceedings from being included in a criminal investigation. And so we did a good bit of work when I'm going to read it now, it's the longest title of a report ever, a report on the intersection of the criminal justice, private family law and public law childcare processes in relation to domestic and sexual violence. And this report really does highlight the faults created by the in-camera rule and the starting point. I mean, it's definitely not attempting to solve the problem, but it is creating starting points. And I do think we can look at other models, and that's something as well that SISI does, is we connect with other activists around the world and other research, stroke survivor, stroke activist collaborations around the world that are working to improve victim survivor outcomes and the impact of systems on victim survivors. The other key issue for us is the use of parental alienation. And I believe that it is the single greatest barrier to victim survivors accessing freedom once they meet the legal system in Ireland. If you have children with a perpetrator, it's a weapon that has been created to punish women who try to protect their children. And it is a profit-driven ideology, and it is prolific through our court system. It has also managed to become embedded in our child protection systems, and it has influenced training of, guards. So those two key areas, I think we have had an impact. There's an awful lot more work to do. And I feel like I've done a lot of talking. So I think I'll leave it there. And if there's any questions, please do get in touch. You can contact me at Mary-Louise@cc.ie. Our website is www.ccsisi.ie. And if someone is a victim survivor right now who is going through really challenging circumstances, and if you need mentorship, help and support, please do get in touch. We will endeavour to help. However, we are really stretched resource-wise. It might not be an immediate response, but we will endeavour to get back to you and to signpost and be as useful as possible. So I will leave it there, and thank you, Madeleine, as always, for supporting SISI. Thank you, Sharon, for everything that you've achieved. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Mary-Louise, thank you so much for that. That's amazing. That really gives some good insight there. You made some really, really good